The council chamber glowed with bioluminescent panels, casting the assembled delegates in shades of amber and violet. Commander Jothar's secondary arms twitched with barely contained excitement as the holographic display flickered to life. Earth, the newest discovery in their expanding sphere of influence, a species so young they'd barely touched their own moon when the collective first catalogued them. Now, decades later, these humans sought entry into galactic society. "We must establish dominance early," Jothar announced, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Study their culture, find what terrifies them, break their confidence before negotiations begin." The screen erupted with images of Earth cities, sprawling across continents, machines belching smoke, millions of beings packed into metal towers. Then came the violence. Footage of their wars, primitive projectile weapons tearing through flesh, explosions that seemed almost quaint by collective standards, stadium sports where they collided at full force for entertainment. And then, something curious, a flickering film from their archives, labeled Predator, 1987. The council watched in fascinated horror as a muscled human warrior stalked through dense jungle, hunted by something invisible, something that picked off his team one by one with plasma weapons and razor-sharp blades. The creature revealed itself a towering monster with mandibles like Jothar's own kind, but twisted into something nightmarish, covered in trophies stripped from its kills. This is their mythology. General Kixar's laugh echoed through the chamber. They fear creatures that hunt them in forests. How delightfully primitive. The others joined in the amusement, though something about the human protagonist's ice-cold, calculating even in defeat made Jothar's tertiary heart skip. The chamber doors hissed open. A human walked in. No ceremonial robes, no visible weapons, just a simple grey uniform that seemed to drink in the light. The name Patch read Commander and nothing more. Female, if their intelligence was correct, though humans seemed remarkably similar across their gender expressions. She moved with an economy of motion that reminded Jothar uncomfortably of an apex predator conserving energy. "Ambassador," Jothar began, using the title generously, "we were just reviewing your cultural archives. Fascinating material." Without waiting for permission, he replayed the predator scene, the invisible hunter, the human screaming defiance even as he died. "This is what your species fears, creatures that hunt in darkness." The human watched the screen without expression. Then her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Want me to bring one?" The chamber fell silent. "I'm sorry." Jothar's translator implant must have malfunctioned. "A predator. You know, the thing from the movie you just showed me." She tilted her head, and something about the angle reminded Jothar of a recording he'd seen once, a Terran reptile called a raptor, calculating the weakness in its prey. "Want me to go back to Earth and bring one?" "We have a few." The translator wasn't broken. "Which meant, you're suggesting these creatures are real?" Counselor Vexith's voice carried an edge of incredulity. "That was fiction. Entertainment. A story to scare children." The commander leaned against the presentation podium with casual arrogance. "Oh, the movie was fiction. Based on us, though." Jothar pulled up Earth's military records, something they'd glanced at but not deeply analyzed. Humans had been fighting something called wars for their entire recorded history. But that was normal. Most species went through aggressive phases. What caught his attention now were the recent files, the ones after first contact. Humans embedded in collective military operations, serving as advisors. Reports from the Krellian front, where human mercenaries had turned a 3-year stalemate into a rout in 6 months. Not through superior technology, they used collective standard weapons. Through tactics. Through an almost prescient understanding of fear and psychology. "What kind of species is this?" whispered Counselor Vexith, reading the same files. The commander pushed off from the podium. "You want to know about predators? Let me explain something about human mythology. We didn't create stories about things that could kill us. We created stories about things that couldn't." Yet, she began pacing, and every delegate's eyes tracked her movement. "Vampires. We invented antibiotics, and they became allergic metaphors. Werewolves. We mapped the genome and tamed the wolf into dogs. Dragons. We built machines that breathed fire and flew faster than sound. And predators. ... double quotes." She paused at the holographic display, reaching through the alien hunter's translucent form. "Predators were our way of imagining something that hunted the way we do. Patience, planning, using technology not as a crutch." but as an extension of the hunt. We made that movie the same year we perfected advanced camouflage systems. The screens shifted without anyone touching the controls. The commander had interfaced with their system. How? Footage spilled across the displays. Jungle operations, but these were real. Human soldiers moving through dense foliage, nearly invisible even when Jatha knew where to look. Thermal signatures suppressed, electromagnetic dampeners, rendering them ghosts to scanners. One soldier took down a training target with a blade from 30 meters. The throw so precise it severed the synthetic neural column. We made stories about things that couldn't kill us yet, the commander repeated, because we knew, eventually, nothing would be able to. We'd evolve past fear. We'd become what we imagined. An alarm shrieked through the council chamber. Jatha's security feed showed movement in the station's primary docking bay, not a breach, but something activating. One of the human cargo containers had just deployed something. The silhouette on the security camera made his blood freeze. Tall, humanoid, but wrong in proportions. Elongated limbs, sensor arrays that swept the bay in predatory arcs. And then it vanished from every camera simultaneously, leaving only the flicker of light-bending technology. Full alert, Jatha barked. "Security to thee. It's just a scout drone," the commander said calmly. "I'll call it back if you want. But you asked for a demonstration, didn't you? You wanted to establish dominance. You wanted to see what we fear." The council chamber's atmosphere had shifted. No more laughter. No more casual superiority. General Kixara's combat instincts had kicked in. Jatha could see the military assessment behind those compound eyes. "You're offering a demonstration of human capabilities," the general asked carefully. "I'm offering to show you what one of us can do," the commander replied. "You have an arena, yes, for martial competitions. Send your best warriors. I'll send one human. No powered armor, no advanced weaponry beyond what your soldiers carry. Just training and instinct." It should have been an insult. It should have been laughable. One human against collective elite warriors, beings who'd evolved in higher gravity, with natural armor plating, with 4 arms and combat reflexes honed over millennia. But something about the commander's certainty made Jatha's primary heart race. The arena was smaller than Jatha had imagined, just 30 meters across, filled with obstacles and varying Terran-urban ruins on one side, dense artificial foliage on the other. Perfect for testing adaptability. 5 of General Kixara's finest warriors stood at the ready, each carrying standard plasma rifles and blade weapons. Enhanced vision, battle networked, absolutely confident. The human entered from the opposite gate. Male Jatha's briefing indicated. Mid-30s by their aging standards, which apparently meant prime for humans. No armor, just the same gray uniform, tactical webbing carrying standard equipment. He didn't carry a rifle, just a sidearm and a blade. He walked to the center of the arena, looked up at the viewing gallery, where the council watched, and nodded once. Then he vanished. Not teleported, not truly invisible, but the moment combat was called, the human simply disappeared into the environment. The collective warriors spread into formation, sensors sweeping, following textbook search patterns. Their mistake was assuming the human would retreat, would hide, would use the environment defensively. The first warrior went down 30 seconds in. The human had somehow circled behind their formation, moving through terrain the sensors said was impossible to traverse silently. A single strike to the neural cluster at the base of the neck, non-lethal by human standards, but the warrior dropped instantly. Before the others could react, the human had taken the fallen warrior's rifle and melted back into cover. "He's adapting to their weapons," General Kixara breathed. "He's never used that model before." But the second warrior fell to a shot from an impossible angle. The human had gone vertical, using the urban ruins in ways the architects never intended. The remaining 3 warriors broke formation, each trying to lock onto the threat, but the human was always where they didn't expect, using misdirection and the warrior's own communication network against them. Jatha watched the thermal readout. The human's heart rate was elevated, but steady, calm. This wasn't desperation, this was practice. The third warrior fell to his own teammates' fire. The human had somehow spoofed their targeting system, made one warrior's IFF, read the other as hostile. When the fourth warrior finally got a visual lock and fired, the human was already moving, rolling through the plasma discharge with timing that suggested he'd calculated the firing delay to the microsecond. The fifth warrior never saw what hit him. The human had apparently decided the demonstration had gone on long enough and had closed to melee range, disabling the warrior with textbook precision. For minutes, 5 of the collective's elite warriors, defeated by one human who hadn't even sustained an injury. The human stood in the center of the arena, not even breathing hard, and looked up at General Kixara. "He is the predator," the general whispered, and Jotha realized the implications. Humans hadn't created fiction about monsters. They'd created fiction about themselves, projected outward, given it fangs and mandibles to make it seem alien. But the real terror was standing in that arena, being that had evolved, not with natural weapons or armor, but with a brain that turned everything into a weapon. A species that had climbed to the top of their planet's food chain, despite being weaker than most of their predators. Because they didn't need strength. They needed strategy, patience, and the willingness to become scarier than anything hunting them. The commander stood beside Jotha now. He hadn't seen her move. Want to see the footage from Earth. She didn't wait for permission, uploading files to the central display. Humans tracking prey across frozen tundra for days. Humans diving to depths that should crush them. Humans climbing mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. Not because they needed to be, because they could. Because their evolutionary advantage was looking at something impossible and making it possible. "We never needed monsters," the commander said softly. "We became them. Every species we've met evolved to fill a niche. Humans evolved to fill all of them. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're the most adaptable. And we made up stories about creatures like predators, because deep down, we knew that's what we'd have to become to survive among the stars." The council chamber filled with uneasy silence. Councillor Vexith pulled up another file. Earth's defensive grid. What they'd dismissed as primitive satellite networks revealed themselves to be something else entirely. Hunter-killer drones, cloaked ships, AI-controlled defense platforms that made the collective's own systems look crude. And the numbers, over 3,000 units classified as Predator class, in active service, not drones, not AI. Humans, enhanced and trained and equipped to operate exactly like the monster from their fiction. "You wanted fear." The commander placed a small device on the council table. It projected a 3-dimensional map of the collective's homeworld, annotated with tactical data that should have been impossible for humans to access. "Now you've got respect. You thought showing us footage of hunters would intimidate us. You didn't realize you were showing us a mirror." General Kixara stepped forward, and for a moment, Jotha thought violence might erupt. Instead, the general slowly lowered his head, the collective gesture of acknowledgement between equals. "We accept alliance," he said. "We accept that humanity is not a species to be dominated, but to be ... double quotes. He struggled with the word, respected. The commander's expression softened into something genuinely warm. "Smart choice. Because I should tell you that demonstration, that was one human having a friendly sparring match. You really don't want to see what we're like when someone threatens us. We have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We've been speaking very softly." She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. "Oh, and General, the Predator class units. They're trainers, what we send to train the real operators. We learned a long time ago that if you want to prepare for anything the universe throws at you, you train against something worse. We invented predators, and then we invented things that hunt predators." The doors closed behind her, leaving the council in stunned silence. Later, Jotha would access the classified files the commander had left in their system, a gesture of trust, or perhaps a warning. Footage of human training facilities, where recruits faced simulations of creatures that made the fictional predator look tame. Laboratories where human and AI merged, where biological limits were suggestions to be overcome. And on one wall of a facility, mounted like a trophy, a replica predator mask, next to hundreds of others representing every threat humanity had faced, adapted to, and surpassed. The final file was a simple text document, maybe meant for him, maybe meant for any species that thought to test humanity. In the galaxy of predators, only one species made the myth real. We didn't fear monsters, we studied them, learned from them, and became better versions of what we imagined. We told ourselves scary stories not to avoid the dark, but to prepare for it. And now the dark knows our name. Jotha leaned back in his chair, looking at the distant blue marble called Earth through the viewport. Humans didn't run from monsters, they became myths. And the collective had just invited those myths to join the galactic community. he found himself genuinely uncertain whether that would be remembered as wisdom or folly. But one thing was certain: no one would try to intimidate humanity again. You don't try to scare the species that invented fear and then evolved beyond it. You don't challenge the hunters who made hunting an art form. You simply accept them as allies and hope you never end up on the other side of that relationship. Because somewhere on that blue planet, 3,000 Predator-class operators were training for scenarios the collective couldn't imagine. And beyond them, something even more dangerous: regular humans, with nothing but their baseline biology and an evolutionary gift for turning any disadvantage into strategy. The arena warrior had been right to fall so quickly. When fighting something that evolved to outlast mammoths, outthink predators, and adapt to every environment on a death world called Earth, there was only one smart tactical choice: surrender before they decide to show you what they're really capable of.